If you need a helping hand, I'll be there soon. I still remember the land of the free. Does that still matter to you and me? 'Cause it's going back as far as I can see, when I can't recognize my own country. Who's to blame? Not my name. Who's to blame? Not in my name. Hey everybody, how you doing? Just wanted to stop by and do a little mandolin ramble. I like to make up songs throughout the day. That was one I made up yesterday, but I didn't learn it. Anyway, this is just for the people who ask for a little extra music sometimes. How's everybody doing? Just wanted to check in, these are hard times. You can't let it drive you nuts, you can't let it drag you down, None of us have been through this before, so we're all in this boat together. If we start rowing in the same direction, we'll get out of this storm, The easiest way to do that is to become aware of what's really going on. What's really at stake, People are getting hit with all kinds of disinformation, every hour, every minute. Towns and cities and states that have a vested interest in keeping them dumb, keeping them oblivious to the real facts, because they've shown themselves to be incredibly, amenable to the complete corruption That's what Donald Trump is doing. He's just trying to make a buck, and he's got all these kind of towny types and, cops and firemen and construction workers and all kinds of red state, people, a lot of military people that a lot of them consider themselves good, hard-working folks, and many of them are. Many of them wouldn't stand for the cruelty that he's subjecting people to in their name if they really understood what was going on. But there's a whole machine out there to make sure they don't really know what's going on. That's why Trump is constantly still attacking Biden and his enemies and trying to blame everything. The economy's not Biden's fault. Biden's not president anymore. And according to you guys, he wasn't president for a long time before the election. So what are you even talking about? And he had up-teen quarters of steady growth in our economy, and now it's shrinking. And the tariffs haven't even really kicked in yet. They've gone into effect, but supply chains takes a while. It takes 40 days for a ship to get across the ocean. So these things are scheduled, and you've already had stuff on the shelves because it had been there for a while, but now a lot of these boats aren't going to be coming. They're going to be coming half empty. You remember what that was like? PPP, we didn't have any in 2020. Get used to that again. That's where most of that medical supplies come from. The syringes and the masks and the gauze and all that crap. A lot of that stuff comes from China. It's not just plastic toys. It's stuff we need. We had a pretty good deal going with the global economy. People got left behind. Not everybody was getting rich and being a billionaire, but it was working, and now it's all been torn apart. And Donald Trump is not going to suffer for that. If he can help it, he's going to blame it on somebody that you're going to want to blame, because he thinks he's got you figured out. He thinks you don't know any better. This is for the townies that might be seeing this, but I believe you do know better. First and foremost, we're all Americans, and what's happening right now is un-American. You don't round people up on the streets. You don't kidnap them, and put them on a plane in shackles and send them to a foreign country with no due process. If you stand for that, if you allow them to do that to fellow citizens, whether you think they're illegal or not, they're fucking human beings, and they're sitting here working their asses off and raising their families just like you are. And we don't have any more of a claim to this land than they do. Many of them have more of a claim to it, if you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? I got guys that are like, I don't want any immigrants, and they're only a couple generations off the boat themselves. They got 4 Z's in their last name. It's like, where'd you come from, dude? We all came from somewhere else, unless we're Native American. There's plenty of room. There's a lot of work to be done. And you know that those folks are going to come here and work their asses off. They're going to outperform you, and you're going to underpay them. And that's been the economic model they've accepted, for decades. They showed up and let you exploit them with a smile on their face and kicked ass, and we both know it. Get something built in this country. Get some real work done. See who's doing that work. Go to a hospital, Go to a restaurant. Go to a factory. Go to a farm. Go to a warehouse. Go see who's working. What's different? Nothing's different. They're Americans. You work here, you stay here, you're safe here. You're not getting rounded up on the streets. What are we doing? Have we lost our minds? For a con man? For a guy who just cut a deal the other day with his sons for $5.5 billion to build a golf course in Qatar? Who's launching crypto coins every 5 seconds? He's going to make billions by the time he leaves the White House. He's made over $500 million in 100 days off his meme coin bullshit. His son's just opened a private club in D.C. so you could grift, and pour money into his pockets and bribe him. Steve Witkoff's sons are involved in it too. The guy who's making all the deals in the Mideast and with Putin. You think that's going to be legit? Or do you think that's where they're going to, send bribes to Trump? Middle Easterners and Russian oligarchs. All kinds of crazy motherfuckers you don't want influence in American policy. You guys need to wake up, man. You gotta really understand what's at stake. You've watched enough movies in your life to know that you don't want to be without security. You don't want to be compromised. And you certainly don't want to lose your economic power if you like to say things like America's the greatest country on earth. Because I promise you, son, there's going to be nothing great about this place a year from now, 6 months from now. Just based on the damage he's already done to our federal government and our agencies, we got a pile of shit to clean up that most of you guys don't even comprehend what's coming, what all those agencies did. But you're going to find out, and you're going to find out the hard way. And if it's too late to do anything about it, you're really going to be fucked. There's still a chance. Wake up. Get hip, man. Take your country back. Don't let them divide us like this. Don't buy the bullshit. You're getting played, I promise you. I get it. If you don't like everything about the Democrats, it's fine. Nobody's asking you to tattoo a fucking donkey on your forehead. You know what I mean? We're just asking you not to throw away our country and our democracy and our standing in the world to please a guy who is a criminal, who has always been a criminal, who deep down you know is a criminal. You know he's a scumbag. You just think it's cool because he lets you be the worst version of yourself, and he lets you say things in public that people didn't used to say in public. And it might feel good, like it feels good to watch, fucking porn or something, but it's stupid, It's not healthy. It's not what politics are supposed to be. We can disagree and still work together. You want checks and balances. You want a healthy opposition. You want a functioning government with two parties. As many problems as we've had, we were the envy of the world in a lot of ways. And you don't want to find out why when it's too late. It's better to protect your investment. There's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into building this country. You're going to give it away for what? For that? For that guy? And his kids? They've never given anything back. They just cut benefits for 9/11 first responders who needed surgery. They just cut it. It's in their bill. It's in the programs they're cutting. They're letting Elon Musk hurt your first responders. You're letting a billionaire, the richest guy in the world, act like it's a video game. Taking shit away from old ladies and old men that served our country, with Social Security, punishing them, letting them live in fear. How is that American? How is that great? Somebody worked hard their whole lives. They were lucky enough to get a little bit put aside, and they relied on Social Security, and they got a place to live, but they don't have much. Those aren't big checks. Those are just like, I'm going to have milk and cereal and food in my fridge and, pay the bills and keep the lights on. They're not asking for a lot. They're asking for what's theirs and what they've paid into their whole lives. And they're going to take it away so you can give a tax cut to billionaires? Trump's given a commencement speech tonight at Alabama, and then he's flying to Palm Beach to his private golf club, where he's been pretty much every weekend of his presidency, except for when he was in Bedminster. You flew him to Rome on your dime last weekend, and he fucking fell asleep at the Pope's funeral. Who falls asleep at the Pope's funeral, right? Like, that's the rule number one in Catholic Church. You don't fall asleep on Christmas Eve in Mass, and you don't fall asleep at the Pope's funeral. There's a lot of other Sundays in the year you can get away with it, but that ain't one of them. I used to play guitar in Catholic Church in Peekskill, New York in the 1980s. Fun fact. My grandparents were very devout Catholics, and I lived with them. My step-grandfather, was an ex-Jesuit priest, very, very big-time Catholic, and his sister was a sister, was a nun, was a big-time nun, famous nun. kinda. She knew my hero, Anthony DeMello, who's a Jesuit priest. If you haven't checked out Anthony DeMello, he has a book called The Way to Love, and he did some talks on PBS. He's passed away. They have a spirituality center for him at Fordham University, which is obviously a Jesuit school. I'm not like a super religious guy. I just want to feel better. And Anthony would talk about loving without attachment, you know, the difference between an attachment and like real love. You know, attachment is like excitement. You're like, I can't live without you. I gotta have that or whatever. Like, that's not the real thing, you know. The real kind of love is like, hey, it feels great when you're around, but if you need to go do your own thing, do your own thing, you know. Everything I need is inside of me already, and when we come together, happiness arises, but I don't need it for my own happiness. I'm not going to cling to it, because sooner or later you're going to take it away, and then I'm going to be feeling worse. It's not just about romantic love. Like, that philosophy, you know, has to do with a lot of life, right? We're chasing excitement and money and glory. That's what you see with these guys are an extreme example, but, you know, they have all this money and they don't want to help anybody, and they're taking pleasure in the suffering of others. That only happens when you're so far away from what love actually is, what the core of being conscious and a human being actually is, that it's mind-boggling. And what's mind-boggling is that, like, millions of people aren't outraged. I mean, obviously millions of people are, but that millions of people like see no problem with it. That people go to work for Trump and go to work in the White House and sit there and lie to the American people, like that horrible press secretary and all those dudes in the cabinet. Like, they're all just awful people, and they just do it with, like, you know, no shame. And those are products of this country, man. And there's a lot of those people. There's people who are waiting in line to be the next one of those guys, you know? There's a lot of money in this corruption, which is what scares me the most about it, you know? And it's why you saw all these big corporations capitulate and all these big law firms. They didn't want to get left behind. They cared about the bottom line more than standing up. And that's always a mistake, because there's nothing on the other side of this, what he's planning. Not for everybody. You know, if you're a crony and an oligarch kind of guy and you're in his favor, you'll be fine, because you'll be living in a mafia state, you know, a kleptocracy. He'll be a dictator, you know, he'll be an authoritarian, but he'll be corrupt. It'll all be about the money. I don't want to get into it now, but if you look at some of the details of what Russia has done in the Ukraine war, there's this journalist who just came back who was kidnapped, you know, like all the soldiers, the kids they've kidnapped, like they're freaking torturing people in like medieval, horrific, horrible ways, and just killing people and dropping bombs on kids. They're everything that we would have fought against as Americans in the imagery that we had of ourselves, especially the Republican tough guy, Rambo, Wolverine era, you know, dudes of my generation. I'm in my early 50s, you know. We grew up on movies about kicking ass against bad villains just like that. Now they're excusing it, and they're demonizing Zelensky, a guy who, personifies a lot of the bravery that we would also celebrate. And the people of Ukraine, they've been fighting one of the world's biggest armies, like, for 3 years. And you're not standing behind them? It's going to be a real tragedy when you look back and see who you've become. So much. It's never too late, man. All right, I guess that's the end of the ramble. I was going to get into some climate change stuff, but I'll save it for next time. Thanks for listening. This is just a little me stopping in for a minute. Peace.